Okay, so look at this, guys. We've got ourselves 98 Corvette Radiator. There's a couple guys that I've talked to already that have been running these with truck accessories in their LS swaps, and they do just fine. So I'm gonna test it out, see what it looks like in there. Okay, so we're having some fitment challenges here. Like, it's almost too wide. Now, this is one of those things where I dislike when someone says something fits and then it doesn't fit, especially when they say, you know, I fit it against a stock AC condenser, so you assume that all the AC components would have to stay in place here. I'm gonna pull this out, and there's a bracket down here that holds these hoses, which, once again, not a huge deal. I can move that bracket a little bit, but I mean, if you say something's gonna fit, it should fit. It shouldn't like require a ton of modification to fit. And this thing, it looks like it's like the same width as the frame, so we're gonna see what happens when I get these out. It is still looking terrible. Like, there's the frame down here, and you can see that's almost touching the frame, and then over there, the same thing going on. I'm gonna pull these hoses out of the way the best I can, and if it doesn't fit, then it just won't fit. Based on everything I see, it's gonna touch the frame, you know? Like, at best. The mount just fell apart. All right. Now, I just took a measurement. So we're looking at 27.5 inches from frame to frame. Nothing that the bumper brackets are going to really do there, because this radiator, when I measured it, was like 28. Let me see. Yeah, so like in its narrowest configuration, we're talking 28.5. It's just too wide. Then you can see here, go from the inside of the frame, 27.5. Now, this is a question I have no experience in. It always kind of pops up in my head, which is, what is the difference between your stock truck radiator that ran a 4-cylinder compared to like a stock Corvette radiator, right? And that's where it gets a little interesting, because at the end of the day, I'm not really sure how to tell what is going to be ineffective, because this stock Corvette radiator that I just got is supposed to fit, which it does not, is basically a 26-inch core, right? It's a 26-inch core, and it's like an inch. I'll measure it here. Yeah, so it's 18 by 24 and 1 inch thick, right? Look at that. I mean, that's the stock D21 radiator. It's actually slightly bigger, I think. 17 tall, 25.5 inch core, top and bottom tank versus end tanks. So then it's also 1 inch wide. So it's essentially the same radiator surface area as far as the core goes. Do the end tanks make that much of a difference? Like, I mean, what creates the difference if this overheating or not? Like, if we can run a 5.7 LS1 using a Corvette radiator, 98 Corvette radiator, why couldn't we run that same engine using this stock Nissan hardbody radiator? And the reason that question is so important to me is because I cannot fit a fan setup with a 2-inch thick radiator. It's got to be a 1-inch thick radiator. This LS3 can be cooled by a 1-inch thick radiator in a Camaro application. Then I would imagine it can be cooled by the same thing, but even in this case, using potentially a stock B2200 radiator. So I ordered in one of these stock radiators. It's a replacement, kind of like a OEM Plus radiator, I suppose, all aluminum. Same fitment, and it just sticks out too far, as you can see. It also puts the hoses in a pretty bad spot. Now, while I've been waiting for some more parts, I've been fighting with this thing when it comes to a radiator setup, because I've seen a lot of people that say they can run it with truck accessories. I didn't want to go and do a cam out the necessity of running a radiator. So we're doing what we can here. At this point, I've got a 96 Corvette radiator here. Stock truck radiator, it's out. Just as it sits back too far. They have a natural rake backwards. That natural rake brings it closer to everything. So what we're going to be doing here is a couple specific things. So one, pulled this loom out from underneath. That actually sits up there, and we'll block it a little bit. I'm also going to take this front bumper fascia off. And what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to pull this as far forward as I can. Not quite to where it's hitting that, but pretty close, so that we have all of the available space to push this thing forward. We've got an entire top row up here. Then there's 2 down here. And then you take out the corner lights. You can see you got 2 right there. Pull both corner lights. Pretty simple connector there. And then there's 1 more in the center here. And would you look at that? Now I got the front end exposed. And yeah, I'm gonna throw this in the back. We'll get looking at how far we can move this. So looking at this, we got about a 1/4 inch I think we can save if we go ahead and pull these out and put a spacer on them. Tilt this whole thing forward about a 1/4 inch. Should get us enough room that the radiator will be up against those, what do you call it, on the side tanks. Had a bit of misfortune here. I'm gonna assume I just didn't understand what I was doing and I tore these, which is unfortunate. So now we gotta find a way to replace them. Yeah, I think I definitely was supposed to put a wrench on these before trying to turn the nut off. That makes a lot of sense. Oh well. So in the meantime, we're gonna leave this loose so that I can move it around to the maximum of what we want to do. And get the radiator back in here, start taking a look at how it fits. I've had it in there before. It is snug. It is something someone else said would work. Just gonna try to make it work for this. We'll take a look, a couple measurements if need be. All right, so I have been wrestling this thing. Now, the reason this is a 96 radiator is I had a guy on one of the pages insanely adamant about his LS swap for the 98 radiator. So I grabbed one, and that was way too wide. Doesn't work. So I went to the 96, which matched everything. Like it has a single inlet up there, all that stuff. Well, with the 96 radiator, it is still tight. And when I say tight, I mean like this thing is wedged in there, and it's a lot of it to do with these bumper mounts on both sides, obviously. Have this propped out kind of where it would be maxed out. It's not in the way right now, so we're out. You know, we did gain our 1/4 inch, which is helpful. We're able to get the bottom way down in. But one thing with this radiator is the end tanks are much wider than the actual core itself. So we're hitting not only on the bumper mounts, we're hitting right here on the AC line running over. I might be able to bend this out of the way or move it slightly. That line right there. Over on this side, same thing, that width kind of coming into play. Like we're practically touching the body with the end tank. It's hard to tell, but you can see that it's pretty close. So it's really close to fitting, but it fits so tight, like too tight. I mean, it's touching everywhere. It's gonna rub through. So the question is there a way to clearance this? Like take the bumper mounts off, grind them down, grind down part of the tank, which isn't like great, or is it a different radiator? So it's still, the saga is continuing with the radiator on this thing. So I pulled it back out. You can see where this is happening. It's hitting right here. Maybe I put a file to this, file down kind of these outside ribs and see if just getting rid of that one gives enough clearance. But I mean, we're talking like a 1/16, maybe an 1/8 of an inch. That means that's all the clearance that's there. I mean, it won't fit right now. So we're talking about going from an 1/8 inch of material in the way to no material in the way and it fits. Snug. Very tight. But that's fitting as snug as could be up here. This side has a weird tightness to it. I don't know if it comes from the fact that, like, see, that's touching down there. So like if I try to put some pressure up here, really kind of comes back out. I don't really like it. Right there. A lot better chance of fitting the fan in. Still really friggin' close, but it would work. It would work. So I have looked at probably 200 different radiators for OEM cars, and I have not lucked out very well. So where we're hitting there, and same spot over there. And there's probably some obscure car out there where the stock radiator works well, but man, I struggled to find anything that would work. Like BMW 3 Series were kind of the closest thing, but then they have specific connectors. Either way, you can't find one. So I'm going to try to grind these spots down in like kind of the dumbest, like it's a crappy spot. I'm going to get burned all the heck. Dude, literally, look at this out here. Took a little off that corner and a little off that corner. I'm not gonna lie, I literally audibly went, wow, when I did this. I think it fell right in. I mean, it's still tight, but it might be enough. There's our fitment here. Radiator, still has some room up front. Not really touching anything. You could actually come a little closer. Clear on this thing. Just move that around a little bit, make sure it doesn't get too banged up. And so we should be good. And at the front of the accessories, let's see what that gives us. somewhere right around 3 inches of clearance to the radiator from the accessory drive. Now the question is, what am I going to do to mount this freaking thing? Because the 96 radiator does not really have any pure, like, obvious mounting points. It has a small lip, maybe 3/8 of a lip on the top and bottom. So I got to see what they use to mount these things in the stock Vet, because that probably the best way I can figure out what I'm going to do to mount to this. Now, ideally, the two easiest things are right here for us. We have 2 holes up in this location that we could bolt through with some kind of bent mount that maybe gets riveted to that lip that you can see there on the radiator. So that's pretty simple. Now down at the bottom, there's not a whole lot to attach this to. So gonna have to figure that out and see what we can come up with to support it at the bottom. We had some stuff show up today, so got our new isolators in here, had to space them out a bit. Gonna do the job of isolating that. We also got one of our barbs and 1 hose. Waiting on the other parts, but you can kind of see what we got going on here. Just need the rest to show up. So we have our radiator cap here, which we're going to put in right there. And we've got our reducer here, this 90, which is 1 3/4 to 1 1/2 that we're going to be using to kind of replace everything that we got going down there. Hopefully so at least. Now we've got our cap in here. Back over to our overflow. That 90, we come over here, 45 down. Still waiting on the other 90, and I've got to cut this off. And then over here, not super pumped with some of my cuts. The angle is like a little bit more than 90. Well, a little bit less than 90, it's like 85. I don't know. It's so small. I think this could work as long as we can get this tight enough on both ends. And yeah, just a few more pieces. We'll have the radiator setup done. Okay, I went and shortened our water pump outlet here. So that way I can stay more in line with this when we get it all set up. I'm gonna tighten this back on and get everything going again. Got our lower hose. Look better once we get that more on. Got our upper hose assembly. Come over here. We'll have to double clamp this. I had to put the splice in there, but it's all functional. One more look at what we got going on here. Got our lower hose and the upper hose. This one I may, once again, switch back to a 45 and cut it up depending on how it goes. I think we'd be okay here, but you can see we're like, kind of like a little out of line. Not horrible. This one over here is fine. Honestly, I wish I could just find a hose that did this, so I didn't have to have the split here. But we got our radiator cap in. Complete the system. Our 90 over here. So we're all good with that. And of course, I think we'll still be able to fit our fans in here. So here's the deal. The next thing that has to happen is the brackets for the radiator. Done with all the hoses for now, barring any kind of revisions I make to it. But I think it could flow coolant and water right now. I think we'd be fine. But before I get the radiator mounted, we got to pull this motor back out, fix the clutch lines so we're not leaking clutch fluid everywhere, do the final kind of fit up on the engine, clean up the motor, get the brackets on it for all the accessories, get the starter and stuff on it. So knowing that it's going to come back out, for now, we're going to put off the brackets on the radiator, get this motor back out, finish everything up on that side. That way we are good to go for kind of the final fit and install, because it's kind of where we're at. We're pretty much ready to come in for the final fit. So I'm excited for that, but I'm going to cut that one off here, guys. Before we go, just a quick reminder, we do have the engine mount, transmission mount, and the center cross member probably by the time this comes up. Also working on the skid plate. If you go over to theoegarage.com, you can go ahead and pick yourself up a set. Helps us continue doing what we're doing here. Helps us finish up this build, move on to other stuff. Greatly appreciate you guys. I'll catch you guys in the next one.